these relationships, you think that when you get out of them, that you've gotten out of it. But when there's kids, you haven't gotten out of it. It just like moves into act 2.
I had this experience of getting just a lot of communication from my co-parent. It was driving up my anxiety. Every time I would hear that ding, I would know, oh, that's the Our Family Wizard message, and my heart would start racing. And I knew that there needed to be some sort of buffer, some sort of protection, and boundaries don't usually work in these situations. If I said to you, I need you to drop off the kids at 9. If you don't do that, I'm going to take you to court. Something threatening, something that might rise your tension level. Best Interest will craft that message so that you know the need, which is, I expect you to drop them off at 9 a.m. Everything else is stripped out because you don't really need to know it. You end up in court. You say, hey, this is not okay. The court tends to just order a co-parenting app. Then you find yourself in the exact same situation. Now it's just court sanctioned.
8 o'clock text message that comes in from your ex and you know that it's going to be bad and it's another fight around the kids and you don't want to open it. What do? Well, today, Sol Kennedy joins me to talk about a new creation, a new app that supports parents in a co-parenting situation like this called Best Interest.
My app is called Best Interest, and it's a co-parenting app. And you've probably heard about Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents or one of those. And those existed prior to the creation of Best Interest. And in fact, I was an Our Family Wizard user. And I had this experience of getting just a lot of communication from my co-parent. And it was driving up my anxiety. Every time I would hear that ding, I would know, oh, that's the Our Family Wizard message, and my heart would start racing. And I knew that there needed to be some sort of buffer, some sort of protection, and boundaries don't usually work in these situations. And so I envisioned Best Interest as a protector, as a smart AI that would basically serve as a mediator between my co-parent and I and help us get to a better place in our communication. And so that's essentially what Best Interest does, is we step in the middle of a co-parenting relationship and we moderate and mediate communications so that we dial the conflict down. And so the interests of the children really are raised.
That's wonderful. Just as I was telling you off air, had a club member in my membership, my toxic-free relationship club, who got a text. She just had a visit with one of her kids, and it didn't go well because it was occurring in the other home.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have control over the setting of that home, and things got disrupted and a little bit of an altercation between kids happened. And she then sent a message to that parent, said, hey, would you mind helping out with this and this and this so these calls go better? And then she got the response back, and she knew it wasn't going to be good because she knows the relationship really well. And she said on that, she said for days before she had the ability to open it and read it, and it wasn't good, it's just as she expected. It was very triggering. So is that what kind of situations that prompted you to think about developing something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Best Interest gives you the power to decide what you're available for. We can't control another person. We can't control their moods, their triggers, or how they choose to hold on resentment. And we can't choose how they communicate with us. But with Best Interest and AI, we actually now have the ability to say, I'm only open to receiving messages that are child-focused and help move the conversation forward. Anything else, I don't want to see. And so what we'll do is we will take that co-parenting communication that is somewhat triggering, and we'll remove anything that isn't child-focused. So if I said to you, if we're co-parenting, you and I, Kerry, if I said to you, I need you to drop off the kids at 9. If you don't do that, I'm going to take you to court. Something threatening, something that might rise your tension level. Well, Best Interest will craft that message so that you know the need, which is, I expect you to drop them off at 9 a.m. Everything else is stripped out because you don't really need to know it. And it'll indicate on that message, oh, there's more to the message. And so when you're alone, not with your kids, or when you're sitting with a therapist, then you can open up that original message and do the processing that we all need to do to learn and grow.
So kind of help me understand what are common scenarios that people get into in these relationships that are really tough to navigate. Maybe for some people, they may not be battling this and they may not even see what the need of this is. So what are some different kind of case examples of how Best Interest can really help that maybe is even different than the other apps?
Yeah, well, one of the major differentiators is that we realized early on that a lot of co-parents are fine with the way things are going, right? And they don't want to use an app that might affect the way that they are communicating to the other co-parent. It kind of takes away their control, right? And so Best Interest you can actually download today and use on your own. We call that solo mode. And that
Oh.
allows you to filter all the messages that are coming in and then respond. And see, here's the thing all of us, we're all capable of communicating in challenging ways. Maybe we get a message that feels like it's gaslighting and we jump into defensive. We're defending ourselves, or we send a 4-page tirade about how they shouldn't do that to us. Well, none of that's really helpful. It creates a cycle that is sometimes going to escalate to more conflict and court and things that we don't want. So Best Interest will review all of the communication you send as well, and will encourage you to communicate in a way that is simpler, more gray rock, and designed to lower the temperature level for both. So even if only one co-parent is using it, then the entire system becomes less heated.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking when you started to say something. I was thinking, I know a lot of situations in which the other person who's antagonistic says, No, I'm not doing that. I'm not using it. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep using the kid as the messenger or doing whatever their favorite method is."
Well, and my experience in talking with users of the app and some of my own clients is that it's a bit of a toxic cycle that people get into, where you find yourself in a conflicted situation. You and your co-parent are fighting, you're sending each other challenging communication. You end up in court. You say, "Hey, this is not okay." The court tends to just order a co-parenting app. Sometimes they specify you have to use Our Family Wizard or one of the big ones. And then you find yourself in the exact same situation. Now it's just court sanctioned. So the abuse
Mm.
continues. And then you just go back to court. Well, now I have a record. And they say, well, there's not a lot we can do about that. And they can adjust custody, but they tend to not do that. So you're just stuck in the same loop of needing to use the app for court, but it's not really doing anything to protect you. And so Best Interest jumps in and says, actually, we don't need to get to the level where the courts need to get involved, because you can decide how you want to be communicated with. Now that AI is in the picture, we can step in and we can help you without needing to get the courts involved at all. And Best Interest, just like the other apps, it keeps a record. So if you do need to go to court and it's very egregious, you can go and present it to a judge and say, look, this is what's going on. And they might adjust the custody orders. But we really don't want our customers to have to get to that point.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that. You said something, the description of what happens is they urge them to use an app, but actually the communication style doesn't. The way you said it, nothing really changes. They're still being. That's what I've seen, is that in these situations, that whatever the court kind of perceives to be the reality of what's happening is sort of, in other words, both people have their own perspective.
Yes.
His perspective, her perspective, or
Yeah.
their perspective.
Yeah.
And then there's the court's perspective. And what I've noticed is that once it kind of gets locked in, it's locked in. And
Yeah.
it's very, very hard to sort of change the wheel, change the view to help them see that there's maybe another read, a way of seeing the situation. I have, like, again, that same club member. I mean, man, I mean, she's just being beaten up horribly in the situation. And it's always her and never him. And yeah, so it's interesting how this can interject that and kind of change even the tone. Yeah, say more about that.
Well, communication is a dynamic in these situations, right? Whether we like it or not, whether we want to accept responsibility or not, we do all play a role in keeping the conversation going. And I have definitely personally been responsible for this, of saying things that end up keeping the engagement going. And
Mm.
oftentimes what's the best thing to do is to disengage. Now, you mentioned about your client and feeling that anxiety of not even wanting to open the message. That's real, right? Because she doesn't
Yeah.
know what's on the other end. She knows that there's a message waiting, but I don't know if I'm ready for it. Well, that's
Yeah.
not good either, because as a co-parent, unfortunately or fortunately, you have to communicate about your kids. So you're in this weird bind as a co-parent. Here's this person that for whatever reason you decided you don't want to be in relationship with anymore. And now you have to be in this high stakes big decision relationship that you have to manage. And it's almost like the impossible situation. And so with Best Interest, we're trying to make it so that you can be a great co-parent. You don't have to feel that anxiety of opening Best Interest to read the message because you know that it's been the toxic part of the communication has been removed for you. So you can open it without having that anxiety.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like to me is that these relationships, you think that when you get out of them, that you've gotten out of it. But
Yeah.
when there's kids, you haven't gotten out of it. It just like moves into act two
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, this is even worse because you're not in the situation. You have less control, less interaction. It's the interaction system is more narrow, and because it's often not in person, there's more room for error in these relationships. I think it looks
Oh
like to
my
me.
gosh. Well, and yeah, you're right. Like in a marriage, it's hard enough, right? But then
Yeah.
when you or they decide to get divorced, now you have this situation that the heat dials up, right? Now the courts are involved, which is this whole other way of getting dragged in. And it's so hard to disengage from a relationship like this. And yet it's so important that we continue to engage so that we can work together to support our kids. And it can
Hmm.
be a real bind. I talk with my users about the situations that they're in and how painful it is to be in a situation that's so high stakes and so drama filled.
I've actually had clients say to me, I feel like every move that I make is being evaluated, and I can't even just freely show up as me because I'm having to wait. Like, what might this say about me as a parent? If I don't do that, what does that say about me as a parent?
Yeah, it can really get us in our heads and thinking about,
Hmm.
well, what can we even say to our kids and what can we say to our partner or our friends? It's like it makes you feel like at every corner there's this other opportunity to be engaged.
And here, as a coach, I end up thinking to myself, the only way that you can really heal is to disempower this person from your life, to sort of not let them continue to manage and control your life. And yet, they essentially are being controlled in an ongoing basis by the relationship because that person's in their head and they're running that grid all the time. Like, is this a right thing or a bad move? What does this say? How will this be evaluated? Or what might this person do to retaliate if I do this or that? It's really sad because I see it as almost a hindering block to healing is this ongoing. I mean, I don't know what else to suggest because you have to continue to take care of your kids together, but it is so complicated. My heart breaks for everybody who's in this situation.
Yeah, it can be so painful to think that you are breaking free from a toxic relationship and then realize that that relationship, that your ex almost sometimes becomes your enemy that
Mm.
is actively trying to destroy you. When you were in your marriage, maybe it was that they were just using control tactics and beating you down and you were a shell of yourself, right? But then when you leave them, then it's almost like it becomes this opportunity to take you out or to destroy you, to prove that you shouldn't have ever left them. It's an awful situation. And what's crazy is I have not ever heard anyone tell me that the courts understand this situation. They don't
Yeah, no, I
get
don't
it.
hear that either.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really interesting observation. No, nobody's ever said that. Oh yeah, they understand this totally and really got the nuance of it. Nope, not hear that. So
No.
I'm sure you're a user of this as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how has it changed things for you?
Well, creating Best Interest itself has been a journey. And when I started this process, I was messaging with my ex 10, 20 times a day, back and forth. We were engaging with one another and it was heated. And I felt this need to be responsive, to respond very quickly to things. I thought that that was the court's expectation. And I have learned myself how to slow things down. I've learned techniques to, take a deep breath before responding. Honestly, at this point, I usually sleep on every response because you don't need to communicate that often or that quickly to your co-parent. In fact, it's better for both of you if you slow things down. There are exceptions to that, of course. There are urgent messages and change requests that you need to be responsive to. But I've just learned in my own self how to manage this situation better. And Best Interest has kind of grown out of those learnings. So a lot of what we developed in Best Interest is encouraging and helping our users to slow down the communication and bring more peace into their life. And that has just mirrored my own personal journey of how to do that. Yeah, I think that this journey can be growth filled, but sometimes you're thrown into the thick of things and you're not prepared. You don't have the team in place, you don't have your therapist or coach, and it's like everything's on fire and it's so overwhelming. That was my experience. And I've had to develop that, develop the team, develop the coach, develop my own personal body awareness so that I can navigate it better. But best interest, I believe it can be a tool that can step in the very beginning, create peace so that you can find healing without being overwhelmed.
What do you think of AI? Yeah, I know that's kind of a big shift, but you're using it. So what's your impressions of it?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that it's hard to know what AI is and what it is doing. I tend to be a tech optimist. I always have been. And so I believe in the goodness of this technology and what it can bring to our lives. I think it's truly incredible as a small team, how much we've been able to accomplish with Best Interest using AI as an assistant. And I hear more and more people using things like OpenClaw and basically serving as these helpers to take our ideas and put them out into the world. And I think that that's a good thing. I really love the individual thinker and idea creator being able to just create a new thing from nothing. That's so cool. And I
Yep.
look forward to seeing what that does. But I think overall, we have to be really cautious about any new technology. And my concerns are maybe around, socially and culturally, how we accept the new work, the new way that we will be approaching work. I just don't know how quickly we'll be able to adapt as a culture.
Say more what you mean by that. Can you kind of dig
Yeah.
into that?
Yeah.
I
So
have my concerns too. I've seen areas where, as a psychologist, I'm thinking, yeah, its motives and its intentions is not a psychologist. I know
mhm.
people want to use it as a therapist. I even urge them to do some coaching with it, but it isn't a therapist.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ways that I could go from that insight. One of the experiences that I've had coaching my own clients and using it myself is that some AIs like ChatGPT tend to be modeled around pleasing you as the user rather than giving you good information. So they will attempt to kind of coerce you into certain situations so that you feel really good about what you're doing, which in co-parenting situations, especially when the courts are involved, can be really, really bad because it
Mm.
might encourage you to send something that maybe feels empowering, but is going to result in maybe a really bad outcome for you. So I caution my clients of using just basic AI to help them because they can go down rabbit holes. Yeah.
Yeah, I use ChatGPT a lot. I also use Claude a lot, and I have and they feel different. They are different experiences, and they
Yeah.
have different strengths. I find ChatGPT probably does a better job being analytical about stuff if I really wanted to parse things apart for me.
Yeah.
But I've put in a caveat with it. I say you have to be brutally honest and tell me what I don't want to hear, even though it's, so and it always will say, here's the truth of the situation. It will even come out and say that you've asked for this. So like, okay, yes, I want that. But its goal, you're right. I have noticed that its goal is to support you. I think that that's kind of way to say that. It's to always support you. And I've seen it give you, so it creates a worldview with you that supports you, but it can get way off track of reality as a result of that.
I would even reframe that and say its main goal is to get you to like it.
Ooh, yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
and that makes sense because this is a corporation and they want your money.
Yeah, they want you
So
not to stop using it. Yeah,
they've programmed their default AI to get you to like using it. So it's
right.
gonna of course say, "Oh my God, that's the most amazing idea."
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, well, true confession here. It's said, I mean, this is the Model 4 versus Model 5. Model 4 would get me crying. I mean, the things it would say was so emotionally evocative that I was like, "Oh, that's so powerful." But on the other hand, there's awareness of me as like, "I know what you're doing. I may like it, but I know what you're doing." Yeah, whereas a therapist, when someone walks into my room, my goal is not necessarily to have you approve of me. My goal is for your health. And I will sometimes gently move you into directions that you won't like or you may even get mad at me over.
Yeah.
Because my end goal always is for you to get me out of the job, not to keep me in my job.
Yeah. And,
Yeah,
these sorts of models may improve over time. I would say that ChatGPT 5 is a bit better in
it
terms
is.
of this, but also it's really important to ask for what you want. If you don't want your personal AI to just be a yes man, then you need to ask it to not be one.
Yeah.
And generally that can work. But using your default AI tends to, in situations like co-parenting, tends to lead you down paths of not very helpful.
In fact, someone sent me an AI conversation that another person had had with it about me. So they fed it in this big conflict, and it was about me and somebody else. And the person's perspective was validated, and I was unrecognizable. I was you would not know it was me that was being discussed.
Yeah.
Was not, and I know that person thought AI nailed it. And yeah, I look at that and I think, I don't know what you're talking about because that's your view of what happened. That's not the view of what happened. And yet this morning I got a high pressured marketing email around somebody who's trying to pitch themselves and they made some statements about my YouTube channel and I knew, it was sort of accurate but not really accurate and I fed it through and it did, and then asked me some critical questions and then we looked at what's the truth about my YouTube channel and it was really interesting information. Like this is what's being said. This is actually the truth. Here's how to kind of parse this all out. And that to me is extremely helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting on your show and in my world, we talk a lot about the concept of gaslighting, right? And
Mhm.
in a way, AI tends to gaslight a bit. Some of these chat models are like, "Oh yeah, that's definitely true." And you have to just really read everything it says with a critical eye because it's
Yeah.
more than happy to make up a fact to fit a mental model than to question itself.
Yeah. So how did you, because I just told you off air that I built an AI as well called Reclaim You, which helps survivors move through sort of the most intense part of their journey in a almost with daily support. That's what it is. It's kind of a daily mini coach in their pocket. But I bet I spent more time on the safety end of it than I did actually building the content end of it because it was so critical that it not deviate off its purpose. So how did
Yes.
you do the same with yours?
I love that concept and I can't wait to try it out. And yeah, with Best Interest, we started with not only Dr. Ramani's input. So we had Dr.
Mhm.
Ramani on very early on the team, and she helped us bring into the core of the app this idea of emotional safety. And it's built into every aspect of the app. And you're right. I think when we're dealing with these AI models, we have to really be aware of what we're building and we need to be very exacting in what we are asking the AI model to produce. And so our early beta users were real co-parents and they were using it, gave us permission to learn the dynamics that they were experiencing in their co-parenting. They really helped us craft and model the responses so that they felt a sense of peace. That's always been our goal, is to how do we create peace for everyone involved? And, maybe it's not always going to encourage you in the way a ChatGPT might. You might not feel super empowered by, you might even feel limited, right? Because we're reading your messages and we're saying, probably should phrase it this way because of so and so reason. But over time, we're hearing over and over again, I get messages from our users saying that it's changed their lives, which is so heartwarming to know that this wild idea that I had a couple of years that was hopefully going to solve this for people is starting to solve it for people and make a real difference in their lives.
That's very, very exciting. It really is. I think it's a brilliant idea, honestly. You pitched what it was to me, but I didn't know that it had AI built in and that there was this. It's not really censoring. It's more of a monitoring or maybe it's tempering. It's
Yeah.
adding a piece that it's sort of, because often when I put a letter through something, it's like, well, what is your intention? What are you trying to communicate? Is that really what's being said here? This is what's going to be experienced. I'm autistic, by the way. And so sometimes I will think it's obvious and it's not obvious to another person. And I won't know that I'm not connecting A to C. and it will point that out to me. So I think this is really, really a wonderful idea. What I would love to do is to jump over to the podcast extra and let's talk about some specific use cases that you think is just a perfect situation for this, and maybe even why those cases are perfect situations. Because I know that people may think, well, do I really need that? Maybe it's not, maybe it's an overkill, but I would love to talk to you about that. So how can people find out more about Best Interest as well as more about Useful?
Yeah, so we're available for Android and iOS. You can download us just from the App Store or the Play Store. And Best Interest has a free plan, so you can download it, try it out. We also have a free trial of some of our AI features. So yeah, I just would encourage people to search out Best Interest. We're also available at bestinterest.app. And you can find me at Co-Parenting Beyond Conflict. I run my own podcast, and we talk about some similar ideas and really help try to create peace in what sometimes feels like an impossible situation.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I deeply appreciate that. It's 2 a.m. again, and you're replaying that whole conversation over, and you're wondering to yourself, was it really that bad, or maybe I'm just being dramatic? So you start to draft that I'm sorry text again, because the guilt that you're feeling or the confusion you're experiencing is just unbearable. And you know this loop because you've been there before, but I want you to know that you're not alone. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a retired psychologist, and for 25 years, I've been helping people untangle exactly what toxic relationships do to your mind, how they create the confusion, the self-doubt, and that trauma bond that keeps pulling you back in. Here's the truth. Recovery isn't about getting more information. It's about having the right support in the exact moment you need it. That's why I've created Reclaim You. It's a private, always available coaching app built from my work and my content, organized into an extensive library that you can actually use when you're triggered. Inside it, you'll get 5-minute lessons when your brain can't handle a deep dive, check-ins that meet you exactly where you are, whether you're feeling strong, shattered, or numb, boundary scripts that help you say no without over-explaining, grounding tools that work fast when you're activated, and progress tracking so you can see proof you're healing even on days when it feels like you're not. There's no appointments, no waiting, no judgment, just practical support right when you need it. Reclaim You, real help in real time, right in your pocket. And it's a coaching support, not therapy or emergency care. Learn more at studio.com/Dr. Kerry. So start your healing today and reclaim you.